that mini session with Higgins taking it by 3 frames to 1. Wonderful century break from the Wizard of Wishaw in the final frame before the interval, but in truth he should have lost the 3 before that. Mike Dunn not able to clinch the chances that he had. We've just watched Ryan Day produce an excellent clearance to move 3-0 in front of Lu Ning on one of the neighbouring tables. And we'll keep you in touch with that match as well. But back with the live action here, and a frame that surely Mike Dunn must win. Caught that much more thinly than he intended, and relieved to see the cue ball wobble in the jaws and stay on the table.
Years of practice. Great return from John Higgins.
Well, Mike Dunn has been very generous in his praise of Higgins' good shots today, and perhaps that's part of the problem. Perhaps he has a bit too much respect for Higgins. Mike, you know, obviously we know what a great player John Higgins is, but when you go out there, you've got to really believe you can beat the guy, even if you're odds against, and perhaps he just feels a little in awe of the great man.
Yeah, possibly. It's a definite that he's got to win this frame, because if he goes 4-1 behind, you've got to say it's pretty much all over. Well, I suppose you can afford to be Mr. Nice Guy off the table, but not on it.
No, the likes of Davis and Hendry were ruthless, weren't they, at their peak? They didn't just like to beat players, they liked to demolish them.
Well, he's got away with that somewhat, John Higgins there. I don't know whether Mike can see enough of this red near the blue to take it on. Possibly. Well, that tells us that he can. That's the non-hitting area. So we might see Mike Dunn take this red on. Well, he's looking at playing cushion first here and try and get the white back into bulk. Well, he's done pretty good there. That's a very clever shot.
Higgins' turn to acknowledge a good safety.
He's not taking the right-hand red on, he's playing safety off one of the others. Needs some cover, and I think he's got it. Well, having said that, I think he can swerve around this yellow and cushion first, pot the red. Yes, he can certainly do that. It's just a question of where the white's going to finish. Well, he'll be happy with his work so far, but he'll be wanting to win this frame as well and really put the pressure on. But this red here only needs a nudge. Again, it's where the white's going to finish. I think he's trying to get on the black here. That's a fraction too hard. That's a great effort. Unlucky. He has the blue, but it's going away from the reds. That was probably an inch away from being perfect on that black. Yeah, it's no good. Well, I'd say I've already noticed that this bed of this #1 table is very quick indeed.
Yes, even by modern standards, it's a fast one. And that was a very good pot, particularly played at pace to try and get back to the reds.
6.
Well, a very fine pot on the blue, but he missed the red by a long way. And he had no sort of position either.
And he's let John Higgins right back in here, and he could be punished. These guys are too good to give chances like this. A lot of side on the cue ball. I wasn't sure what John was trying to play on there. Unless he was trying to get on the red nearest the green, but he's out of position. Well, he feels he can see enough of this red to take it on to this right corner. But again, it's one of those, he's not quite sure where the white's going to finish, even if he gets the pot. Might get on the black. Let's see. Well, he's got a shot on the pink and the black, actually. I think pink would be favourite. That's okay, he's got one to the centre. And these reds are just gradually opening up here. And within 2 or 3 shots, it could be a frame winning opportunity. 4-1 for John Higgins, that's a long road back for Mike Dunn.
14.
Especially against a player of this class. He doesn't normally let you off the hook when he's got you there.
No. He's been very clinical down the years. It's not been vintage Higgins today by any means, but he has that ability, like all the great players do, of just upping his level when he senses danger. Did so in the 4th frame after Dunn had gone on the board with an excellent break of 74.
Yes, very good at just building themselves into tournaments, aren't they? They'll get through the first couple of rounds, you know, and say, okay, fine, when there's a win, but I'm still in the tournament. It's like the World Championship. I just feel that, you know, the top stars are so vulnerable in that opening round. But once they get to the best of 25s and 33s, you know, in the final 35, then they're really on form. And of course, the remarkable story of Ronnie O'Sullivan coming back last year, taking a year out and winning his 5th world title.
18. Something to spare.
Yep. He wasn't totally out of the game, you know, altogether. He'd been playing the Legends Tours, exhibitions, challenge matches and things. So he was working, he was playing, you know, matches, he was working in his game. It's still a great feat, though, to do that. Because it doesn't matter how good you're playing in practice. Sometimes it's about the match practice, about the matches out there, the games. And if you stay out of any sport for a little while, people just go past you. And you just wonder if you're still at that same level.
And that's why I think many people felt he was, relatively speaking, a bit of an outside bet for the world title, because he'd had so little match sharpness to draw on. But as it turned out, he was able to work his way in, and in the end he won at a canter.
But the other side of the coin as well, Phil, he was coming in fresher than anybody else. He hadn't had a long campaign going into the World Championship.
Well, we saw the likes of Mark Selby struggle to produce his best form after a relatively arduous season. And of course, as we know, Selby's the sort of player who spends blood, sweat and tears in every shot he plays, and said afterwards he didn't feel like he had a lot left in the tank. O'Sullivan, on the other hand, when he's playing well, does it so effortlessly that you feel as though he doesn't 39. Use up great mental reserves.
Yes, good point.
But it was a magnificent achievement, and it'll be fascinating to see if O'Sullivan can replicate the sort of form he showed at the Crucible in the big events coming up.
Yes, he's not here this week, chose not to play. He's a few weeks off and whatever, and preparing for the next things ahead. But, you know, it's nice to have the choice now, Phil, isn't it? These players, it's an entry system that, as Mike Dunn looks on here, could be 4-1 in a few minutes' time for John Higgins. But nice to have the choice. 3 years ago, these boys didn't have the choice. There was only playing, what, 6 ranking events, probably 9 events. Now we've got 30 plus on the calendar. So they can look at their schedules and say, fine, I'm not going to play in that one. I'm just going to have a little bit of a refresh and then concentrate on the majors. That's fair enough.
Yes, I think for the likes of O'Sullivan, it's all about the big ones now, isn't it? Particularly the world titles. I think O'Sullivan privately, even though he might not admit it publicly, still believes he can at least match Stephen Hendry's tally. And given how well he played to win his 5th title a few months ago, you would say it was by no means an impossible feat. And it would have seemed that way just a couple of years back, given O'Sullivan's tendency to, well, lose patience if his game wasn't at its absolute peak. But he seems now to be far more forgiving of himself when things aren't going to plan, and that makes him doubly difficult to beat.
Yeah, talking about patience, this guy's got a lot of patience, a lot of determination, and it's looking like 4-1 here for John Higgins. And again, very tough for Mike Dunn to get back into this one. Full house in here to watch one of the top stars in our game.
Well, if there's one man in the game who can give O'Sullivan nightmares when it comes to the really big events, it's this guy John Higgins, who's won more than his fair share of the big matches against the Rocket.
And Ronnie has great respect for him as well as a competitor.
78.
He's got the mental strength to take Ronnie O'Sullivan on.
79.
Well, a break of 74 gave Mike Dunn the 3rd frame. Higgins responded with a century.
$86.
And if this red goes in, a good chance for back-to-back centuries for the Wizard.
But let's not forget, Phil, I know Mike Dunn could have won the first 3 frames here. He had chances in all of them. It was 2-1, and now it's about to go 4-1.
Yes, you sense when he lost the first 2, which he should have won, that it was always going to be very difficult for Dunn mentally as much as anything to overcome that disappointment. 95. The red drops in after thinking twice about it, and now the century is well and truly on. But since then, Higgins has moved into overdrive. There is another century. 538.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
104.
3rd on the all-time list, behind Hendry and O'Sullivan. Hendry way out in front with 775, although O'Sullivan has now passed the 700 mark, and who knows how many more the Rocket might gather before he hangs up his cue for good. But this has been vintage stuff from Higgins at the back end of his opening match here. Oh, well, the brown stays out, but the century already completed. Back-to-back centuries then for Higgins as he moves 3 clear of Mike Dunn. 4-1 is his lead. He needs just 1 more frame.